Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Korea Society. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Stephanie Huang. You might recognize me from our membership emails. So I'm Development Program Officer here at the Korea Society, and I handle our membership community. Thank you to all of our members in the audience, and even to those of you who are not. You guys are who make programs like this possible. So as part of the development team, something else that we are working on at the Korea Society is developing our Young Professionals Network. So in this professional series, we like to invite experts to speak as representatives of their field and of their expertise, and we hope that you guys can make great use of this opportunity for networking. So thank you again to KACF for partnering with us. We hosted a program last year with you guys, and it was a huge success, and we're so excited to be working together with you guys as well. And for those of you in the audience, KACF is such a wonderful organization, and they're so well connected and have such high value people on their staff. And thank you again to all of our speakers for joining us today. I can't wait to hear from all of you guys. So that's a little bit about the Korea Society. If you guys have any questions about our Young Professionals Network or how to get more involved or how to become a member, then please come find me or our staff in the back of the room at the end of this evening. So I'm just going to turn it over here to Kang to speak on behalf of KACF. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kang Yoon. I'm the president and CEO of the Korean American Community Foundation, KACF. And we are so pleased and honored to be partnering with the Korea Society this evening for this event. Just a brief word about KACF. We were founded in 2002, so 23 years ago. A small group of Korean Americans came together with the idea of what can we do to lift up those who are vulnerable in our community by giving together. And it was really the beginning of being rooted in giving. So many of us as immigrants and children of immigrants, we realized that our whole ethos and kind of sort of practice and habit was really about focusing on getting into a good school, getting that job, getting a foothold into American society. And that is all really important as immigrants or children of immigrants. And yet we saw that by shifting a little bit and thinking about how can we also give as we rise? How can we lift up others as we become more stable and even have some capacity to think about giving? So tonight, we're so fortunate to be able to hear from leaders in our community who are really, I don't know if we can ever say we're experts in giving, but we've been thinking about it and are able to help us to kind of shift maybe as we're thinking about our own giving journey. And so many of you, like me, we're kind of thinking about how do we have more impact? How do we actually join hands with others? And I'm just so pleased that for KACF, that for 23 years, as we've been doing this work, one of the important things that we've realized is about creating that pipeline of giving too. And our associate board, who are really the ones who are behind this evening and are doing so much for our next generation and being a part of, with the Korea Society of bringing together this young people's network, that we can all do more when we do it together. So I really hope that you will enjoy the program, and I want to thank really our associate board, the leaders who are here. Can I just recognize them, or can you just stand up? And there's Mimi Kim, there's Elliot Chang, right? I'm sorry, and Andrew Kim, and we are just so pleased and proud of your leadership. And so with that, without further ado, I'll turn it over to our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay. Usually I don't need a microphone. That's what happens when you have a mother who's a singer. I'd like to add my thanks to the Korea Society and the Korean American Community Foundation for hosting us this evening. This is a real treat for the four of us to get together. For me, the first time with the four of them all in one room, which is incredibly fun for us. And I'm going to be serving as your moderator this evening. My name is Emil Kang. I wanted to set some ground, not rules, but some expectations. We really want this not just to be a talking session where we're talking to you. We want to actually hear from you all. And so we have some homework, but it's real live homework that we'd like you to do right now, and I promise it's not painful. I know as Koreans we all don't like homework, but here I'm going to put on the next slide, which should show. Okay, a QR code. For those of you who are technically able, please scan the QR code now. We will be asking you a couple of questions on this, and I want to make sure that everyone gets the QR code first. And I'm sure if you don't catch it now, there'll be members of the Associate Board who might be able to help you get it. Has everyone got it? Please get it now, even if you're not sure you want to participate. It's Abe modeling good behavior here. All right. So when we started planning this discussion, we wanted to basically understand firstly what it is we mean when we talk about the word philanthropy. I think many of us will have different meanings. And so we wanted to start with a discussion with all of you to understand what philanthropy, the word, means to you exactly. So what you're already seeing now, and I'm really happy about that, is people, as you enter the answer to this question, it'll start popping up on the screen live. So we're giving, we see giving to our community, loving people, oh, that's the best one. Intent, going to our community, giving of self, bridging, strategic generosity. Well, these are great answers. Helping others, doing what's right, sharing, money. Can I just say the thing that I'm so happy that's not here is like the words like wealth or wealthy or 1% or billionaire. These are not words that are showing up, and I think it speaks really highly to the group that we have here and to what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so please keep those going. As I go, we're going to be introducing the panel, and I'm going to ask a second question before we get going. But so my name is Emil Kang, and just so you know who I am, recently I was the program director for arts and culture at the Mellon Foundation. I oversaw arts and culture, all the grant making for the foundation. I've since left that post, and I've just recently been named an entrepreneur in residence at Yale University, where I'm there working alongside many incredible other entrepreneurs. I'm happy to say I'm the first arts leader to be appointed an entrepreneur in residence, so it's a big deal, I think, for the arts to be recognized. Oh, thank you.
Cool.
We're going to spend the first chunk of the meeting, 45 minutes or so, in dialogue with this group, and then the last 15 minutes we're going to be inviting you to ask questions. Okay, I'm going to go on to the second prompt now. Okay. This is a simple yes, no, or I don't know answer. Please, do you consider yourself to be a philanthropist? Okay. So the majority of you are saying no, which is not a surprise. Oh, wait, it's like a horse race. The majority of you are say, oh, no, it's tied. It looks like it's neck and neck, yes and no, with only a handful of I don't know. Very interesting. So again, I think a lot of this depends on how you define the word philanthropy, right? And how you define philanthropist. We are hoping that through the course of this discussion, we'll shed some light on the many different ways that we think of the word philanthropy and how we connect that to giving back, to community and civic engagement, and ways that you're thinking about self, not about self and others. So I'm going to now move it on. Okay, here we go. I have the distinct pleasure of being in conversation with these three incredible individuals. Each of them have found their own singular way, and dare I say, non-linear way to their callings. Throughout their careers, each of them have woven together experiences across sectors in ways that have made their contributions to society and the Korean American community exponentially more powerful. You've all read their bios, but please allow me just to extend their intros to share what may not be visible. First, we have Jeannie Park. Jeannie serves as board chair of KACF, we know that. But she also has built expertise across multiple industries and sectors, creating a perspective on leadership and community impact that no single career path could have provided. Her influence reaches into spaces across media, journalism, racial equity, community, and philanthropy, all that would have remained otherwise siloed. Sue Kim is the Chief Philanthropy Officer of the Peabody Essex Museum and a KACF board member. And she's also navigated social entrepreneurship, grassroots organizations, arts and culture, and community engagement, bringing insights from each world to strengthen the others. Her impact extends far beyond any one organization because of this cross-pollination of perspectives. And lastly, we have Abraham Kim, who is the president of the Council of Korean Americans and also a board member of the Korea Society. And his journey leading think tanks, policy outreach, university leadership, and community organizing has shaped him into a masterful translator and connector, speaking the languages of policy, leadership, academia, business, and grassroots advocacy. This range makes him uniquely effective at building the bridges that our communities need. And lastly, I'm happy to say that all of us are proud members of the Council of Korean Americans as well. I want to just start before we go into questions, say that we are all on stage Korean Americans of a certain age. And is that okay? Okay. And I think what's also safe to assume that based on what I've shared with you and what you know about all of us, that we probably all veered from parental expectations in our work. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. I think that what is also interesting is that for all four of us, philanthropy isn't a tool, but a calling that all of us have followed throughout our lives. I do hope that tonight's conversation feels less like a talking to and more of a conversation, but I wanted you all to know that the organizers didn't know this, but all four of us are actually friends. So we're really hoping that this can be more of a dialogue, a fireside chat that you're all sort of witnessing. Let's see. So I want to start with the word philanthropy. I think all of you may know that the word philanthropy itself means love for humankind, right? That's what it means. It does not mean anything but that. And I want us to think about the ways that we commit to supporting our fellow humans, how we support with our time, our skills, our networks, our talents, our hearts, and our voice. All right. Now we turn to the panel. The first question for all of you, we want to start with your origin stories. What first inspired each of you to get involved in philanthropy? That would be the first question. I'd want to extend this to all of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Jeannie.
Sure, thank you. And thank you so much for having me here today. I think that if you want to just go way, way back, I grew up in Ohio. My parents were immigrants. I was actually born and raised in Ohio. And I think that my first taste of philanthropy in the broadest sense, came from my parents who really did everything they could to help other immigrants like themselves and also to help Koreans back in Korea. Like this was just a very important calling for them. And my sisters and I always razz my parents about how growing up we never had our own beds to ourselves because, they were always hosting relatives, friends, students, people who were trying to move to the United States and get a new start like they did. And of course, they did not call it philanthropy. I don't think they thought of themselves as philanthropists. I think if you had asked any of us then, put the word philanthropy or this question to us then, we would have said, no, that's not us. That's not for us. That's for wealthy white people who have inherited money. And so I think that's something that, in more recent years, I've really tried to interrogate is that word or just question and also, through KACF to show that there is a broader, definition of who is a philanthropist, that we can all be philanthropists, that philanthropists can look like us too. At the same time, I think that I also question a lot about philanthropy and organized philanthropy and what it means in this country and our society, and kind of the reasons why people give and the reasons that I want to give. And so I'm just going to stop there for now. We can get into that more later, but that's kind of, I think, the seed of where it started.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And I really appreciate that you really brought it back to your upbringing and your childhood. Thank you. Abe.
So for me, similar story. Actually, philanthropy, my exposure to philanthropy was actually through my parents. My father was involved in social services, and then he also went on to do government service and other things like that. And then my mom was a nurse. So I think the dual exposure certainly had an impact on myself and my sister as well. And so and also learning, and of course the church as well, right? Back in the 70s, 80s, we're dating ourselves now, but really church was a social service center as well back in the early immigrant period. And so I think, so my aunts and uncles and everyone was involved, and the encouragement to think beyond just yourself and even just your immediate family, but helping those other families and in the broader community, I think was all, I mean, we never sat in a class to learn these things, but we learned through examples, and we learned through watching and getting involved and serving and so forth. So I think it was really a childhood exposure, and I think that really instilled certain values in me as I grew up. So.
Great, thank you, Abe. Again, what I'm hearing you say is that watching by learning, which is a lot of how children learn, and you had that opportunity as a child yourself. Sue, how about you?
The same as my friends here, actually. For me, I think the earliest exposure to, again, not a word that we understood back then, but about giving was as a child in the church. So my father was a minister, and my mom, who was serving so hard right next to him. And one of the earliest values that I learned was giving was not really about the amount, the dollar amount, but really about the heart. And I think that mindset and that philosophy has stayed with me to this day. I think in a lot of philanthropy circles, people sometimes wonder, oh, what is my small gift, my modest gift going to do? It's a drop in the bucket. But I might counter, and I think it goes back to my childhood roots of learning that actually a lot of drops in the bucket together collectively can put out fires, quench somebody's thirst. And I think I saw that lived out as a child within the church community and beyond. And so to me, philanthropy is definitely not necessarily about the wealth, the dollar amount that somebody has, but our heart. So.
Well, again, we didn't plan this. And I think what you're hearing is, I think, a very commonly held belief, especially I think with immigrant communities, where we are brought within communities and we learn to model behavior of adults as we grow up. And I too also grew up in the same way with parents who were giving back to their church mostly, and also to a Korean school that my mother helped found in New York City. So these things were modeled after us that we understood was part of who we were as humans and our obligation and responsibility. It was never seen as a chore or a thing that we had to do because we were supposed to. We just wanted to and needed to do it. So if I can just follow up with you, as you talked about the heart, you've seen philanthropy from all different sides, obviously as a child, but also throughout your career. Can you recall the moment where philanthropy really, I think, where you saw it have a human impact, where it really did hit you in the heart, as you say?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many stories that I can share, and this one actually was not even something that I had prepared, but my father one day brought home a pregnant teenager who was abandoned who was disowned by her family because he saw her crying at a fast food place. And then we took care of her in her home. We gave up our beds, and we helped her find resources. And supported her, and she lived with us until she gave birth. And I think about that and the heart, and of course the rest of the family, we followed suit and supported that. It was not about the money, but about the heart. And I saw the impact that it had on this young woman. Those are just things that have just deeply resonated with me. I'm also a scholarship recipient for college. The UCs did not give me enough money, but my alma mater in Boston did. And I think about the people that I had never seen who were investing in the future generation. And that allowed me to have the education that I had, and I'm here today. And the privilege of being able to give back and pay it forward now in terms of supporting future students. So those are just some stories of how it's really become very real to me.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. Abe, obviously you were brought up with parents who were devoted to the idea of service.
Yeah.
As you embarked on your own professional path and career, was there one thing you wish you would have known as you thought about this life of service that you really have led all the way through, that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I think, well, first of all, life of service is hard, to be honest with you. And also, life of service, I mean, we're all serving and working together. And life of service is not one individual, but it's really a community. And it's a mindset. And I think hopefully you've gotten a little glimpse that, philanthropy is not just about giving money. It's about giving time, talent, opportunities, and also just being able to really give to others without expecting anything in return, right? And so I think we live, each and every day could be a philanthropic life, right? And so I think one of the things, I didn't really think about this, but I thought about it later on in life in terms of that philanthropy is also, I almost feel like, okay, there's the nonprofit sector and then there's a for-profit. And if you're in the for-profit, you kind of have to move into the nonprofit, and there's a certain skill set to be in the nonprofit. Mm-hmm. But in fact, all the different skill sets that you do in the for-profit and nonprofit, they're all the same, right? It's just the labels are different, right?
And you're paid less.
Yeah, and you're paid less. So, marketing and fundraising is marketing and sales in the for-profit. Fundraising is in the nonprofit. Communication is absolutely important on both sides, and so forth. And so I think for me, what I maybe not wished I had learned, but discovered along the way, that really the skill sets are fungible across. Yeah. And just because you're in the for-profit doesn't mean you can't contribute in the nonprofit. And just because you're in the nonprofit, you can't contribute in the for-profit. Right. Because the skill sets are very similar. We just label it differently at times and get paid less too. So.
Jeannie, if I can just play off what Abe was just saying, you've had remarkable careers in all the areas that I mentioned earlier. How did you think about the skills you've developed professionally and translating them to social impact and to philanthropy? Did you have to think about what you were good at and try to translate it differently, or did it just come naturally to you in the ways that Abe was saying?
So I would actually turn it around a little bit and say that it was actually the skills that I developed in my volunteer work and my work with nonprofits that actually helped me in the for-profit work that I was doing. I always say to people, like, if you want to learn how to be a leader and you want to learn leadership skills, go try to run a nonprofit or a volunteer organization. I mean, it is, and I'm sure like everyone on our associate board recognizes this too, that in order to lead people on a mission, when you're not paying anybody a thing, and finding people who want to come along and contribute their time and efforts and money and resources and truly get nothing monetary in return. I mean, you have to have a lot of skills to inspire someone to do that. And so I actually think, for instance, one of my early nonprofit involvements was with the Asian American Journalists Association. This was when I was working as a magazine editor, and I was the founding president of the New York chapter, which is how I actually first met Kang and Juju Chang, who also went on to be a co-founder of KACF. And I really, and I often apologize to everybody who was in that early chapter, because honestly, I was practicing and learning my leadership skills then. And I look back at some of the things I did and I feel like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. But they were very gracious. And, again, I learned so much that I was then able to apply in my work as an editor and managing people as an editor. So, it can kind of go both ways. But yes, I think you always have to make an assessment of what it is that you bring that's special or that you can really leverage to, for whatever endeavor you're jumping into. And so that is something I think about a lot.
Sue, I wonder if I could bring you into to that conversation. How does that strike you? Does that resonate with you too?
It does, and I'm smiling because I've also known, I think some of you have now guessed that many of us have known each other on this panel for decades. And to think about Jeannie being so, humble, I have seen her being a trailblazer over the decades and starting things and initiatives where it was so needed. And it's been wonderful to be able to watch her just heart, her love, her skill sets all married and tied together for the benefit of various communities. And I think that's been a beautiful thing to watch. And I think you're right. Like, it's a blending of not just only our professional side, but our personal side, and those talents and the heart behind it all has been a wonderful thing to see.
Thank you, Sue. Abe, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, we've been joking about how you don't get paid as well in nonprofit, but I don't want to. It's kind of a tongue in cheek, but I don't want people to get away. The takeaway from this is, oh yeah, nonprofits get not paid enough, but really, it's about there's so much more. There's a reward on the nonprofit side that's, and it's really driven by values, what things that drive you. And really, I think for those of us in the nonprofit space, just to oversimplify, I think our for us, at least for me, is about transformation, having impact and changing people's lives, right? And so, and oftentimes, in the for-profit, you're driven by certain priorities, and you don't have the time or the bandwidth, but we have the privilege in the nonprofit world, whether it's in the arts or media or social movements or anything like that, is that to go from nothing and mobilizing people and then changing a community, changing lives.
Yeah.
And that's what really is meaningful to us. And so, yes, we would love to have more resources. It's always great. But there are things beyond resources, time, access, stories, all these things are so important, so meaningful, and that fuels us and gets us, jumping out of bed every morning. So I think that's an important aspect of this as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think all of you have just mentioned that you're driven by the change you seek and the impact you want, and it shows up in many different ways in your life. And I wonder, especially for younger people who tend to come up in this world, especially if they are high-achieving people with so many interests. How do you go about sort of figuring out where to put your time, your talents, and how do you think about this? And especially if, one, you're focusing on wanting to support the Korean American community, but you also have many other interests. I'd love to hear any thoughts you might have. Maybe we'll go back to you, Sue. How you manage that sort of the complexity of interests, the multiplicity of interests, and also the limitations of time and energy.
Absolutely. And I think a part of that is really, is it, the organization or the mission, is it aligned with your own personal values? Is it something that you can really invest your heart and time and energy and et cetera into? And then the other part too, for me, has just really been about asking, do I have the bandwidth? Because for me, if once I'm engaged with an organization, I want to give my all, and would I be able to do that? So it's really been kind of those two main factors, and also giving myself some grace and kindness that I can't do it all, and I can't get involved with everything, but I'm grateful that there's so many wonderful friends and colleagues out there who are supporting it in different ways, and perhaps at different stages and chapters of my life, I can still engage and help a particular organization, but for now, I may be a part of this organization. So,
time and place for everything.
yeah, absolutely.
Jeannie, I'd love to hear. Again, you seem to do it anyway. You seem to be able to do all the things at all at the same time. And
Well,
so,
yes.
how do you manage that? And perhaps that might not be the best advice, but just to do everything. But how do you
So-
manage to prioritize that kind
Well,
of?
I have to
approach.
say, I do wish I had been better at prioritizing and kind of, I guess, putting a bit of a filter on the things that I was involved in earlier. And I think that sometimes I don't know, my life has been very opportunistic. Like people ask me to do something, I'm like, oh, sure, that sounds good, or that sounds fun, or, this job comes up, and I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, that sounds good. I mean, there was not a lot of intention in my life early on, and I kind of regret it. Gave me a lot of opportunities. Like I was very open to a lot of different things, certainly, but in some ways, I also feel like I didn't get as far maybe in the change that I want to be part of trying to make because I was a little bit scattershot. And so I think that, as you think about philanthropy or giving or being involved or whatever, to the extent that you can focus yourselves, or at least for me, I mean, it's fine. You can do it that way too. Like, and I think part of it is getting older and seeing that there is less time and realizing that the changes that I, have wanted to be part of, like it's not going to happen in my lifetime. And my job now is just to like move the baton from, as far as I can and hand it off. Right. But that limit of time is making me feel a little more regretful about the time that I feel like I maybe spent on things that I wasn't the best person for that, or that wasn't the best use of my resources. So I don't know, to the extent that you can really kind of home in on what you really care about, where you really think you can make a difference, and where the need really is. And for me, one of the things is I think maybe sometimes I differ with some people, and I say this whenever we have KACF gatherings, because I know that a lot of people, we talk a lot about giving back, especially when you are a part of an immigrant family, when you didn't have very much, and then you've managed to have incredible opportunity, you gain incredible privilege, you are able to really succeed in the ways that your family wanted in terms of stability, financial stability, all of that. And but then it's important, I think. So people talk a lot about giving back, right? Giving back to the schools that educated you, the people who brought you along, all of those institutions that helped you get where you are. But to me, that's not really what drives me at all. For me, it's that I ended up somehow with like so much, like more than I need to be healthy, to be secure, to lead a life of dignity. And so many people don't even have that. And for me, living in a world where there is such disparity, such inequality, such inequity, it is something that I really grapple with, and it's what drives me. And of course, fixing that, again, is not something I'm going to be able to fix. But it's, deep inside me, I look at my commitments and it's like, how does that align with the values, with the change I want to see, with the world that I want to build? And, also examining my own complicity in that too. And how is it that things I might do might be also perpetuating a situation that I think is wrong. So it's, anyway, that's just to share a little bit about kind of how I try to select in terms of the things I'm involved in and what I give to.
Oh, thank you, Jean. That was beautiful. I'm sure all of us have spent many years on many different boards of directors, some good ones and some bad ones, some successful, maybe some not so successful. As the members of the Associate Board and others embarking on a career of service and involvement in volunteerism, could you talk a bit about how you assess your time on a board? How do you know if your time has been impactful and helpful versus not so? And And when do you decide maybe it's something that you should move on from? Maybe we'll start with you, Abe.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think in terms of, there are different ways you can contribute, right? And I think to base it on just one linear metric is probably unfair, because people come onto boards for different reasons. And there are what we call the T's, right? The time, treasure, ties, meaning access,
Networks
and
talent.
where you can offer an expertise. But I think there's a couple of other T's there too, which is I was Googling this, but like teamwork, tenderness, and tutelage. I thought would be good, which is because on boards you're governing, you're overseeing, but also you need people that are willing. Board culture is absolutely important. And sometimes a person's presence, if the right person, can bring and mobilize that board to help move that organization forward, right? And so kindness and instilling that, building that culture, someone responsible for actively doing that, that's important. Tutelage, leadership. You need leaders on boards. And also finally, teamwork, and so forth. And building, working together as a group. And so I think your contribution to the board, there are many facets, and it's not just about how much money you can bring in or how much, whether you're, obviously you want to be a part of all of those, as many of those T's as you can. But I think it's really about your dedication and trying to figure out how can I plug in and really add value to where this organization is overall going and its mission and vision. And I think that's really, and what is your unique contribution? So I think those are areas. Yes, there's a time period and scope where you spend the time, and there are time for new blood and new leadership to come on, and that's important too. That's important for the health of the organization as well. But I think these are all aspects that one should evaluate, not necessarily just based on one measurement.
Yeah. So I heard you introduce some new T's that I'd never heard before. This is really interesting. So teamwork, tutelage, and tenderness.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that last one? Because you spoke to the others, but not to
tenderness.
tenderness.
Well, tenderness is really about kindness, right? Making sure that there is, everyone on that board, if it's a nonprofit, it's all volunteer work, right? Is one. And two is that sometimes these organizations are working on very hard issues, and you're making a difference. You're trying to change people's lives, right, in some capacity. And oftentimes, I think board work is serious work, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has. It's all people working from their heart, right? Head and heart, we always say, intellectual as well as empathy, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we lose the empathy in the work because we're like, oh, we got to balance that budget, or we gotta grow our membership by 30% or whatever the case may be. But sometimes those numbers and things we lose the heart of why we're doing it. It's because we're changing lives. We're trying to make a difference in the community, and sometimes we lose that in that process. And so I think there are individuals one person can make a whole difference in saying, hey, you know what? We can't forget the people. So.
Well, I'm being reminded that we have to keep moving on. I think we also want to make sure that we have an opportunity to actually provide some tactical advice to the audience, especially to our younger folks here. I think in many cases, especially for a young person, there are always a sort of a set of perceived barriers or reasons why people can't be involved or can't do something. Maybe I can direct this to you, Sue. Are there any obstacles or perceived barriers you think that young people shouldn't deal with and maybe should set aside when they go about this journey?
It's a good question. I'll probably frame it a little bit differently, that I think there's a a real misconception sometimes where the younger generation these days are considered less committed, and I completely disagree. I think the younger generation is deeply passionate. They care about social justice. They care about cause-based initiatives, and they're into social impact investing. There's so much that you're also passionate about. And perhaps gone are some of the ways in which maybe a philanthropist or an individual is engaged with just one organization for a whole lifetime. I think that can go out the door. That is still wonderful to have, but it is okay for you to be passionate about the things that you're passionate, even if it's for a few years, because what you do with that time is so invaluable to that organization. I think about what just happened here tonight in terms of this panel that was organized by an incredible associates board of wonderfully talented and passionate young professionals. There's so much that is possible. So I think don't be discouraged. Believe that you can make a difference in what you do and for the time that you're able to invest in that. So
Yeah, wow, that's great. Thank you, Sue. Jeannie, if our audience leaves tonight, what's one thing you think that they can do to action the things that we're talking about here tonight?
I think that it's important to just always look at the bigger picture also of what you're doing. And, we talk about philanthropy and as being, I think in some ways like a good thing overall. I don't need to be like the negative person up here, but I'm just sharing things that I wish I had thought about earlier. And I think that there are, that philanthropy isn't always good, and I think it's important to think about that too, about how you go about giving and the ways that you give. This is a very extreme example, right? But if you're a family that has made your money, getting people addicted on opioids, and then you use that money as philanthropy to support a museum or a university, et cetera, and get your name on a building, is that good philanthropy? And is that, at the end of the day, was that philanthropy good? And I think, again, I'm sure no one in this room is involved in anything like that. But, just kind of examining the ethics of the way that you live and the way that you build your resources that you may be utilizing in philanthropy as well. I think it's important to kind of have a holistic view of your life as it relates to philanthropy and not isolate the philanthropy that you may do as just like the good part of, what you do, but to think about all of it.
mm-hmm.
That's brilliant, Jeannie. Thank you. Abe, if I can turn it over to you, and we want to leave some time for questions in the audience. So this is my time to ask you to think of some, please, that you want to ask of the panel. I think we will have a microphone, is that right, going around, or people can speak loudly also. And we'll have on that same software, you can actually submit questions as well. So either way, there are opportunities for you to engage, and we really do want to hear from you. So I'm going to come back and we'll sit in some silence if you don't ask questions, okay? So please do. But Abe, with the incredible leadership development work you've always been doing, what are ways that young leaders can get involved today?
I think in terms of philanthropy, you mean? I think it's never too early to start philanthropy. I think it's a lifestyle, right? Or a lifetime journey, right? And to Jeannie's point, sometimes, as you're doing it, you'll learn from the process and know what is ethical and what is not, good examples, bad examples. But it is a lifetime of practice and a mindset of not only giving, sure, when you're young, you may not have a lot of treasures, but you may have a lot more time. And there's so many nonprofits that would love your time, right? Just to be involved, right? To run programs like this. And as you get older, your philanthropy might change, right? Because you have more resources, your bandwidth may shrink and so forth. And so I would say to young people is that philanthropy is a lifetime journey, and it changes over time. And once you set that early, then your whole life, as you get older and older, you know, your generosity also grows as well. And so yeah, we encourage young leaders not to think that, oh, you have to have a certain, you know, net worth or so forth. It has nothing to do with net worth. You should start, even our kids, just children, right? Getting them started and watching and seeing is all part of that. So.
I might actually add just really quickly that also to remember that you're not alone in the good work that you're trying to do. I think we've shared a little bit already that the four of us actually know each other, and some of us for decades. We took different paths, but we have shown up and been there for each other, not only personally, but professionally. I mean, you know, Jeannie and Kang brought me onto the board of KACF. Jeannie and Kang came over when our Korean gallery at my museum opened. They flew in just for that, and that meant the world to me. Abe and I have known each other for nearly, I think, 40 years. He was in my wedding party as one of my husband's groomsmen and friends, but I have been so inspired by his leadership over the years and his dedication to our community. And you all know Emil is incredible. We're all CK members, as we shared. But the reason why I say that is we're lifting each other up and we're there for each other, building bridges together. The whole saying about, you know, all ships rise together, we're doing it together. I would just encourage all of us not to forget that. It is so encouraging, it is so hopeful, and it's a lot of fun too.
Thank you, Sue. All right. I think it's time for questions. And I'm going to try to advance this. Oh, here we go. Oop, that's the wrong one, right? That's for later. Here we go. Okay. It's not going to be often that you have this incredible panel in front of you. So if there are any questions you have or want to know more about anything you've heard, please feel free to ask. And should they stand up and just speak, or what would be the best way to handle the questions?
If you raise your hand, we have a team member that can hand out a mic to you guys. So just let us know if you have any live questions. If not, then I can get it started with some of the questions that you've asked through Menti.
Oh, great.
So let me start with the most likes. Have you found a good way to consider empathy and heart as part of a nonprofit's goals or KPIs? This is for you.
Wow, that's a great question. Who wants to tackle that one? Now, don't be shy. I'm sure all of you want it. We found a way to put heart in.
Okay, I'm going to twist this a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question, but it's something I did want to bring up in that. So, I mean, Abe and Sue both work on staff at nonprofit organizations, and I'm a board member. I've actually never been a paid staff member of a nonprofit. I have run as a volunteer nonprofit, but not as sort of paid staff. And I do think one thing for board members, and if you already are a board member, or if you ever are a board member, or a donor for that matter, I think one of the really important things that we I don't know, that I kind of assess board members on is also the ability to trust the staff who are running the organization, and that we as board members are here to support and enable their work, but not to dictate it, not to control it, and that to recognize that often when you're a donor, that money is a form of power, and just to really be aware of how you are exercising that, and that part of what I think that you want to do as a donor essentially is to shift some of the power that you have to the people who are working every day and are really committed to moving that mission ahead, who are the professionals. And I'm sure Sue and Abe could have many examples of difficult board members that they've dealt with. And so that's something I'm sure I've been one of those at times, but it is something I'm constantly trying to remember. And so for me, that's part of the empathy that I want to bring to the board work that I do, is that understanding that there are professionals who know what they're doing, and my job is to trust them and support them.
That's great. Sue, anything you want to add to either what Jeannie said or to the question itself?
It was slightly different too, a slightly different answer. When you talk about KPIs, especially in either fundraising work and whatnot, oftentimes in nonprofit organizations, the measures are related to, the dollars or the total donors or things of that nature. One of the KPIs that I've over the years encouraged my teams to think about are the number of contacts, genuine contacts and moments, touch points that you've had. It doesn't necessarily need to lead to a gift, but a genuine and meaningful contact. And those are things that I actually encourage my teams to kind of think about. A different kind of KPI is oftentimes I think fundraisers might go into a meeting or a conversation, whether it's with a foundation or an individual, and they have one thing in mind: how am I going to get that money? What I've been encouraging as a part of the KPI or the training for a lot of my teams is make that human connections. Forget that dollar amount. You're sitting across from another human being who has values, who cares about things. Get to know what is meaningful and important to that person and whether our values align between that organization and ours. I don't see philanthropy and also KPIs and et cetera as transactional, but really about matchmaking equal parties, if you will, for a common goal to do something really good together. So a slightly different answer, but things that I keep encouraging my teams to think about.
I just want you to know that as a funder that I was for many years, what Sue is saying is so unusual and beautiful. And as a funder, we long for that level of humanity in conversation, and not in the transactional nature, or in the guessing of what the funder wants. We actually want to be better to understand what the human conditions are, what you're trying to achieve. And it's so hard because, of course, the power imbalance is the power imbalance. We understand that. But to have that approach and have it based on who you are is, I think you should teach courses on this, by the way, for philanthropy. But I think, again, Sue's work as a chief advancement officer, as all these things that she's doing, it's very rare for a Korean American to be in that role for a white legacy organization. And I just do think that there's a lot more that we could all learn from you in the way that you've actually integrated your humanity into that work. So
thank you.
So, bravo.
I've still got a lot to learn. So.
Can I? So sometimes I have trouble applying KPIs. I mean, you have to demonstrate progress, and you have to demonstrate impact and how you're doing that. But oftentimes when you're in the human relationship and human transformation work, it's hard to measure, because oftentimes the results and impact is long term, right? But today you're planting the seeds. You may not see the harvest until maybe 20 years later, right? So, but how do you measure that, and how do you know? And that's it's difficult, right? And oftentimes the work of nonprofit is more long term. Right, and also it seems so large, the issues that we're tackling, but we need nonprofits and leaders working at every corner of these issues so that we can ultimately long-term make progress. And so I completely understand KPI, and everyone, we need to see progress and measurement and impact, and donors want to see progress, and so I think. So I have mixed feelings, but I know why we need metrics around these things.
As a funder, we talked at length about impact and the sort of the sorry nature of how grantees respond to this question, because in many cases they have fabricate data in order to try to satisfy funders. And so we started talking about things like, we call it intention over impact. How do we actually ask nonprofits to actually articulate their intentions ahead of time, and how they've actually met those intentions at the end of the time, when the grant is ending. And when we actually ask for clarity around intentions, it actually gets them to think very clearly about what it is they're trying to achieve. And then we come back to them later. And that delta sometimes, where they've learned maybe their intention was one way when they started, and they maybe realized after their grant that maybe it shifted. And that is an impact that we feel is very valuable for nonprofits to be able to articulate. All right, do we have any other questions?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and speaking. But my question for you all is, why is it important for people who are in the growing phase of their life, growing their careers, growing their networks, to be involved in philanthropy, whether that be giving time or giving money now rather than later when they feel more established or more secure?
It's a great question. Maybe Jeannie.
I mean, I think it's just about practicing, and like I said, that you never know who you're going to learn from, when you go out there and start getting involved. And again, there's so many ways that you can be involved and you can make a difference. And I just think it's important to go out there and learn and try. And it's the only way that later on, when maybe you feel you have more ability to make an impact, that you'll be really ready to make the impact that you want to have. I think, like everything, it's something you have to practice.
I think starting early, it's not just about, we've been talking about like giving back and giving, but there's also personal benefits too.
Oh, absolutely.
Tremendous personal benefit. Obviously, that's not the only reason why we do it, but there are the secondary benefits, which is, as Jeannie referenced earlier, as you're in the nonprofit, you may have the opportunity to practice things that you wouldn't be able to practice in your daytime job, right? Whether it's practicing your leadership, fundraising, all that stuff. There's no class for that stuff, right? You've got to learn that on the fly, right? Yeah, maybe. And secondly, the relationships you build along the way is invaluable, because as you're working with people with common values to solve a big problem, whether it's someone who's older or younger or whatever, you're mobilizing together and you're building community around this, and you're trying to solve a problem together. And through that process, you're building relationships, you're building contacts, you're building a reputation of generosity, right? And so as you're doing this throughout your life, you're just building this community, and you're being a part of so many other communities. And so there is a personal benefit and fulfillment through this, and of course the meaning and the joy of making a difference in other people's lives, and that's part of the journey as well. So I think those are some of the motivating factors.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, and then you might find yourselves 3 or 4 decades later having a nice chat with some friends who've been on the journey with you, and it sure is nice. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all staying around a bit afterwards to enjoy some beverages, so please do talk to us afterwards. And I do really agree with the generosity, not necessarily the reputation of it, that happens as an outcome, but the idea of generosity and spirit that I think all of us like to think we bring in our work, and finding like-minded people and people who have shared values is really going to help sort of elevate and scaffold you to succeed, I think, in the future. Okay, we have run out of time. And I think it'd be a really good way to end would be just to ask you to give us one-word answers, okay? Or if you can try, you can make it a compound word if you have to.
Oh, man. Okay.
And maybe if it's really good, we can accept 2 3-word phrases. But let's want to give each of the young people who are leaving tonight, what is one word that they can take away from this conversation today that they can use going ahead? What's one word?
Empathy.
Empathy. Okay. Abe?
Now.
Jeannie?
Equity.
Empathy, now, equity. What is so beautiful is that these are all of the values that you've been hearing the entire conversation, and they've come out at the very end, which is don't wait, which is do it from the heart, and do it in the context of community. These are things that I think that we have all, I think, lived our work by and lives by, and there is no time to waste. The world needs us, and the world needs all of you. Could I ask you all to just join me in thanking our incredible panelists, Jeannie, Abe, and Sue. And to all the young folks out there, please take advantage of the networks that you have. Please take advantage of the people that you meet. We are all here knowing where you've come from and want to be helpful as much as we can. thank you again for joining us, and thanks very much.